The second my foot crossed the threshold, a discordant silence slammed into me. Not the peaceful hush of a sleeping house, but a thick, suffocating stillness, the kind that hangs heavy before a storm, or after a terrible truth has been spoken. It was as if life inside had been abruptly paused, the actors frozen mid-scene, a tableau of impending disaster. My keys, usually a familiar jingle that announced my return, felt leaden as I dropped them into the ceramic bowl on the hallway table. The clatter echoed with an unnerving resonance, amplified by the unusual quiet, each tiny sound a hammer blow against the fragile facade of normalcy I still clung to. I walked past the gallery of family photos that lined the hallway walls. Smiling faces, captured moments of what I had believed to be genuine joy, now mocked me with their cheerful lies. Helen and I, beaming on our wedding day, Tessa's gap-toothed grin from her 10th birthday, a sun-drenched vacation where we all held hands on a crowded beach. Each image felt like carefully crafted propaganda, a manufactured narrative designed to conceal the rot that was slowly consuming us. As I rounded the corner into the living room, the world didn't dramatically shatter, sending shards of my reality scattering across the floor. It was far more brutal, more definitive. It snapped, cleanly, finally, like a brittle twig broken with a sharp, decisive force. The sight that greeted me was a grotesque parody of domesticity. Helen, my wife of 25 years, sprawled on the plush velvet couch, her silk robe hanging precariously off one shoulder, revealing a disconcerting expanse of skin. Her lipstick, a vibrant crimson I had always found alluring, was now smeared, a sloppy testament to recent indulgences. And her expression? It was smug, almost triumphant, as if she had just accomplished some significant feat. But it was the figure entwined with my 18-year-old daughter, Tessa, that sent a cold wave of nausea crashing over me. Tessa, barely a woman, perched astride a man whose lined face and thinning hair spoke of twice her years. He clutched her hips, his eyes glazed with a predatory satisfaction that made my stomach churn. And then I saw him. Another man, younger, with a lazy smirk playing on his lips, lounged insolently between Helen's legs, his hand disappearing beneath the silk of her robe as if he owned the very space he occupied. The casualness of it, the blatant disregard for everything I held sacred, was like a physical assault. Helen finally looked up, her gaze meeting mine. There was no shock, no fear, barely even annoyance. A petulant sigh escaped her lips. "You're always showing up at the wrong time, Robert," she drawled, her voice thick with a languid contempt. "Always ruining our perfect evening." Perfect. She had the audacity to call this debauchery, perfect. And she said it with such casual disdain, as if my presence was the unwelcome intrusion, the jarring note in their harmonious depravity. I didn't scream. The rage that threatened to erupt felt too primal, too visceral. I didn't even blink. My eyes remained fixed, unblinking, taking in every sordid detail, cataloging the betrayal of marital vows. My heart didn't pound with fury. Instead, it seemed to contract, to narrow into a cold, hard knot of something far more dangerous than anger. I had married Helen when I was just 23, a naive idealist swept away by her incandescent magnetism. She was charisma personified, a force of nature draped in silk, her mind sharp, her allure potent, and her ambition savage. I had believed we were equals, two halves forging a shared destiny, building an empire together from the ground up. 3 thriving restaurants, a successful consultancy firm, a sprawling home in the affluent suburbs that now seemed to creak under the immense weight of false dreams and unspoken lies. Our daughter Tessa had been our miracle, the embodiment of our shared love and aspirations. At least, that's what I had desperately wanted to believe. I had poured my life into building that empire, sacrificing countless evenings, missing birthdays and school plays, all in the name of creating the life they so readily showcased on social media. The endless stream of smiling brunch photos, the exotic vacations I funded but never attended. I had foolishly believed my absence was noble, a necessary sacrifice for their happiness. And in those stolen moments, In the hollow spaces created by my absence, they had begun to fill the void with strangers, with fleeting, meaningless connections that chipped away at the foundation of our family. The first insidious sign had been a scent, faint and fleeting, but undeniably there. Not Helen's usual floral perfume, not a trace of men's cologne, but something else, something primal and unsettling, the tangy, stale odor of intimate encounters, clinging to the bedsheets I hadn't touched in days. Then came the subtle inconsistencies, the mismatched stories about their days, the forced, brittle laughter that would abruptly cease when I entered a room, the furtive glances exchanged, the private texts Helen would shield from my gaze. Tessa, too, had undergone a sudden transformation, adopting an air of premature adult independence, her eyes darting with sly knowing when Helen spoke of her friends. But denial is a powerful anesthetic, and I had stubbornly refused to acknowledge the truth that was staring me in the face. It wasn't until I had discreetly installed the hidden monitoring devices, a desperate act born of gnawing suspicion, that the full, horrifying scope of their illicit activities was laid bare. It wasn't just Helen. It was both of them, brazenly using our home as their personal theater of the absurd, my money as their endless funding source, my very bloodline as a twisted prop in their sordid drama. Watching the footage felt like a surgical procedure performed without anesthesia, my heart exposed and dissected while I remained conscious, unable to scream. But I didn't confront them. Not yet. A cold, calculating resolve began to take root within me. Revenge, I knew, was a dish best served cold, requiring patience, meticulous planning, and an unwavering silence. I retreated into myself, becoming a ghost in my own life, observing, cataloging, quietly plotting my next moves. Step 1. Sever the financial ties. I meticulously moved all business holdings into an irrevocable trust, with my brother, Mark, as the sole trustee. He was loyal, dependable, and utterly disgusted by Helen's behavior when I finally confided in him. I then presented Helen with a series of expansion plans, documents requiring her signature for power of attorney. She barely glanced at the intricate legal jargon, her mind likely preoccupied with her illicit rendezvous. Her signature, scrawled carelessly across the dotted lines, was the first domino in her impending downfall. Step 2. Amass irrefutable evidence. I downloaded weeks of damning footage from the hidden cameras, organizing it by date, time, and the faces of her numerous partners. Some of the acts captured were undoubtedly illegal, all of them were utterly disgusting. I hired a private investigator, and then another, cross-referencing their findings, gathering hotel receipts, exclusive club memberships, even discovering that 2 of the men were providing financial compensation to Tessa directly for her involvement. Step 3. Identify their weaknesses. Helen's crippling pride, her carefully constructed social image, her desperate need for admiration, Tessa's insatiable craving for attention, her rebellious streak masquerading as independence. Perfect. Their vulnerabilities were now my weapons. The night I walked in on them was no accident. I had left work early, feigning a sudden illness. No calls, no text messages, no heads up. I knew, with a sickening certainty, that they would be celebrating. It was Tessa's 18th birthday, a milestone they likely believed I had forgotten, lost in the endless demands of our business. They were too consumed by their drunken revelry, too entangled in their depravity, to hear the soft click of the front door, the almost silent approach of a man whose world they had so carelessly shattered. That's why I stood in the doorway for a full 5 seconds, allowing the tableau to sear itself into my memory, letting the full weight of their betrayal crush whatever lingering affection I might have still harbored. Long enough for the strategically placed camera, concealed within a smoke detector, to capture every sordid detail. The wheels of my carefully orchestrated plan began to turn a week later. Anonymous packages, containing meticulously compiled video documentation and detailed reports, began arriving at the offices of Helen's most prominent clients. One by one, every contract she had painstakingly cultivated dissolved, her reputation as a shrewd and trustworthy businesswoman evaporating like smoke. Simultaneously, I sent an anonymous email to Tessa's university, attaching explicit clips of her conduct and irrefutable proof of her solicitation. Her scholarship, her golden ticket to a brighter future, was revoked within hours. The cold, bureaucratic language of the university's response a stark counterpoint to her tearful pleas when she eventually found out. Then came the public fallout, a carefully staged spectacle designed to shatter Helen's carefully constructed facade. A lavish dinner party at our home, 30 of our closest friends and business associates gathered, Helen resplendent in her finest black dress, still clinging to her crumbling illusion of control. I stood at the head of the long, polished mahogany table, a crystal glass of champagne held loosely in my hand. "I'd like to make a toast," I announced, my voice calm and steady, betraying none of the turmoil that had raged within me for months. "To honesty," I continued, my eyes locking with Helen's, which flickered with a nascent unease, "and to seeing people for who they truly are." With a quiet click of the remote, the large screen television mounted on the wall flickered to life, and the damning video of their private activities began to play. 5 excruciating minutes of their betrayal unfolded before the stunned audience. Faces paled, forks clattered against china plates, and the silence in the room screamed louder than any outraged accusation. Helen stood up abruptly, her mouth opening and closing soundlessly, her carefully applied composure finally cracking. "You," she began, her voice a choked whisper. "I'm not done, Helen," I interrupted, my tone calm, cold, devoid of emotion. "You see everything you touched? It's gone. The business, the house, even that expensive car you drive, it was never truly yours. Just borrowed time." She lunged across the table, her eyes blazing with a fury that was as performative as her past affections. I simply stepped aside, allowing her to stumble past me, her carefully constructed rage dissipating into a pathetic display of desperation. Tessa wept, not tears of shame or remorse, but tears of bewildered anger, a spoiled child unable to grasp the concept of consequences. I filed for divorce the very next morning, citing irreconcilable differences and marital infidelity, submitting the mountain of evidence I had so meticulously collected. The judge, a seasoned veteran of countless marital implosions, didn't even blink. I was granted full ownership of my name, my assets, my dignity. Helen was left with nothing, not even the pedigreed poodle she had doted on. Tessa attempted to move in with various friends, but the stain of her actions, amplified by the unforgiving glare of social media, followed her like a shadow. She called once, her voice choked with tears, demanding to know how I could have ruined her life. I listened in silence, allowing her self-pity to wash over me, and then I simply hung up. It's been a year now. The sprawling house, once filled with the echoes of laughter and lies, has been sold. The walls are clean, painted a sterile white, holding no trace of the life that once unfolded within them. I sit now in a smaller place, a modest apartment that feels quiet, real, authentic. I eat meals I cook myself, simple and nourishing. I sleep soundly, without the constant unease of having to look over my shoulder. Sometimes, in the quiet solitude of my evenings, I briefly wonder how they are living now, what their new reality looks like. But the thought is fleeting, a momentary curiosity that quickly fades. Because true revenge isn't about watching them suffer. It's about reclaiming the version of yourself they thought they had destroyed. The man you were before their poison seeped into your life. They had called it night there. Perfect evening. They had no idea that the truly perfect evening, the one filled with the quiet satisfaction of self-respect and hard-won peace, started the moment I finally stopped loving them.